John Trudell.
I'm gonna be slow.
Okay.
All right, we're rolling.
Okay, would you mind just giving us your first and last name and where you're from, how you identify with whatever community?
My name's John Trudell. I'm from Santee, Nebraska.
Would you mind taking off your sunglasses?
Sorry.
Is that part of your persona? Or?
Yeah, it's part of my reality.
Okay. All right.
I'll give them my mind, but they don't get my soul, brother.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, my name's John Trudell, and I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a Santee, Dakota, so I grew up in Nebraska.
Okay. Cool. Can you start off by giving us just a brief history of the Reign of Terror? What happened on this land that's being commemorated here today?
Well, the period that we call the Reign of Terror in Pine Ridge, I mean, it literally started, I'd say, about January of 1973 and ran through, maybe it ran another year. I mean, this outright just physical war against the traditionalists and the AIM people, probably maybe through sometime into '76. And in the occupation of Wounded Knee started at the end of February of '73 and lasted into May. And then in 1975 there was a firefight in Oglala where Joseph Stuntz and 2 FBI agents were killed. And in that period of time between the occupation of Wounded Knee and that firefight, because they're like point references, that if you were politically unpopular, you had no protection from the law. I mean, because realistically, that it was one side was armed, and the other side wasn't allowed to be armed.
And the side that was armed?
Were basically, it was done through the Bureau of Indian Affairs Police and the tribal police, but the directors behind it were these FBI people that came in and set all of this in motion. Because this Reign of Terror, there was no Reign of Terror in 1972. There were hard times, but then the FBI showed up in January of '73 because AIM had taken over the BIA building in Washington, D.C. for 1 week during Nixon's re-election. So they were really angry at us. But they couldn't deal with us in Washington, D.C. because there was too much scrutiny. So when we left, and the FBI came to Pine Ridge in January of '73 and started arming the police and training them and just using the police to fight a political war against the AIM activists and their traditionalists who were their base of support. See, so this just escalated. I mean, it just escalated into, you know, I mean, the Reign of Terror phrase actually comes because there were so many people murdered on this reservation in 1974 had the highest murder rate per capita of anywhere in the country. And all of this was basically unsolved. And it was all either AIM people or traditionalists. And, you know, things like drive-by shootings, people talk about any familiarity with gang neighborhoods and things like that. I mean, that was what it was here, drive-by shootings. So it was pretty intense. And this is what eventually led up to the firefight.
And what happened in the firefight?
Well, at the firefight, well, I don't know exactly what happened, but the FBI invaded the Jumping Bull compound and opened fire. And as a result of this, but there were enough people in that compound, and so they fought back. And when it was all done, 2 FBI agents were dead, and a Native man, Joseph Stuntz, was dead. And, you know, and the government even lied about all, I mean, well, obviously, lied about all of that to do what their thing was. But because this is what Peltier's in prison for. But if you really look back to it, see, the day the FBI went into that place and opened fire, they had no legal justification to be there. See, they said that they were there, that they had a warrant for Jimmy Eagle, who stole a pair of cowboy boots. So they were going to serve this. See, but they didn't have this warrant. Jimmy Eagle wasn't there. See, so when you inject reality into the picture, see, there is no reasonable explanation for them being there, shooting their guns when they were there. Yeah.
And so you've described some of the political reasons for the war on the Lakota land, but can you talk a little bit about the deeper war? It's a war against nations, but it's also a war of...
Well, I mean, I think, because part of it, because it was a political war in one sense because it was fought legalistically, politically, because I think that's about maybe the same thing, legal, political. But it was fought with bullets and FBI and law enforcement and propaganda and print, the press and all of these kinds of things. So on one level, it's to put down the political militants. But but the reality of it, on another level of reality, it was about what the people in Pine Ridge, through AIM, what they were doing is they were saying to the American government, that we have our own perception of reality. We have our own way of life. We have a way we perceive reality. Which is our culture and our traditions, and they were saying to the American government, see, that the American government has legal responsibilities here. There are 5 types of law. There's common law, criminal law, constitutional law, statute law, and treaty law. The Constitution of the United States says the treaties with the various Indian tribes and the Constitution are the supreme laws of the land. So this is law. It's not. So when Indian people, Native people talk about treaties, right? They're talking about law. Mm-hmm. They're not talking about a moral issue or an ethical issue. Well, I mean, in a way it should be, but they're not talking about a moral issue or an ethical issue. They're talking about a legal issue. And if America is to be a nation of law, then you cannot have these 300 plus laws that were violated.
The treaty laws.
The treaty laws. So from the American government side, they don't want anybody to understand what we're saying about that the treaties are laws, because I mean the implications could be unlimited on this one, right? I mean that would benefit everybody. So they don't want anybody having that as a part of their consciousness. But the spirit of the people. Now this is another thing, right? And this is what the American government was trying to attack. So they use this reign of terror to try to terrorize people and break their spirit. But in the end, all it does is it intensifies it in some kind of a way. And because, like that one day in June in 1975, at that firefight, see, it has a lot of symbolism because the people fought back. In a situation where they were truly outnumbered, because for 2.5 years this war had been being waged against them. And so, and the government, they want all the Native people to be good little Americans, see, because. See, we're the people. We're the Native people of this hemisphere. We're not Native Americans, all right? And we're not American Indians. But once these identities become our identities, then we've become, see, our ancestry goes way beyond the word America. See, we're older than the concept. America's a concept less than 600 years old. We're older than the concept. So how can we be Native Americans? How can we be American Indians? We're neither. We're the Native people of this. But the American government wants us to become Native Americans, to believe and feel as powerless as the rest of the Americans do. But we have these legal agreements saying, nah, we don't have to.
So what would it mean to become American? What is that process, and how is it happening? The government or Western civilization is coming in and trying to transform,
okay.
And what's being left behind, and if it's left behind, and what are you moving towards?
Well, I think the way the whole process of Americanizing, or whatever it is, takes place, I mean, it's done through the language, it's done through the educational systems, the economic systems, the political systems, the legal systems, call it judicial systems, right? The religious systems, because all this doctrine we're brainwashed from birth, all right, with someone else's perception of reality. But the net result, when you really look at it, when the people who became Americanized, these people are kind of in a mess. I mean, in some ways, they got more material than we have, certain things. But in other ways, inside their heads and their grasp of reality is almost removed. They believe and they don't think. They believe in their government, right? They believe, or their party, or their political party. They believe in their religion. They believe in their economic systems. They believe in their society and in their civilization. All that believing and no thinking. See, and I think, this is what the deal, I don't think that once you become Americanized, you think anymore. Because, see, thinking, our intelligence, right, our creativity, our imagination, our thoughts, and our understanding or lack of understanding or accuracy, that's that whole process taking place. Everything that that I call this predatory mentality, everything that it has done to us, whether we're Native people or American citizens or Europeans or whatever, right? Everything it has ever done to us was to get us to believe the way they wanted us to believe. Not to think the way they wanted us to think. They wanted us to believe. They wanted us to substitute thinking for believing, but not know the difference. You know, so, I mean, how much real creative thinking and thought goes on? I mean, we were programmed with all our insecurities, all of our frustrations, all this stuff programmed inside of us. It affects every decision that we ever make as we participate in a daily reality. So it looks to me, well, that decision-making process unfolds through the belief system, not through the thought and thinking system, but through the belief system. So it's like every institution that they hammer us with is there to get us to believe and not to think.
And today is about healing. That's been said numerous times. In your opinion, what is the healing that needs to be done? What does that look like?
Well, the healing that needs to be done is of consciousness. Our consciousness needs to be healed. We need to understand, we need to know who we are. We're human beings. Human, the bone, flesh, and blood. Our DNA, metal, mineral, liquid. All right? So we're shapes of the earth. We have being. The trees, everything of the earth is made up of the same DNA, same metal, mineral, liquid. So all things of the earth are shapes of the earth. We have being. And our being comes from our relationship to the sky and the sun. Because literally sunlight, the rays of light that are the sun, that's literally that sperm that brings life to the water-bearing womb that is the earth. So the being part of us is connected to this universe and this earth. And all things have that. All right? And our relationship to power is connected in recognizing that that's who we are. And we were given intelligence. Along with life, we were given intelligence, and intelligence for a human being. This is our medicine, our protection, our healing. This is our way to keep balance in an evolutionary reality, generationally, individually. How clearly and coherently we use our intelligence. And so what needs to be healed is our intelligence, our consciousness, our access to our intelligence, for us to understand and recognize who we really are. See, nobody recognizes themselves anymore. You ask somebody who they are, well, they're this, or they're that, or they're this, or they're that. And if you say, well, biologically, or whatever the scientific terminology, then people might properly say a human being. But they don't know, they don't understand what it means to be a human being. And this Americanization process, this Western civilizing process, that's what it's really all about, is to so we no longer strip away our identity so we no longer recognize ourselves. You know, and we're programmed with guilt, sin, and blame from birth. Then once that programming takes place, then that, once any of that sinks into us, that there's something wrong with us, then we start to perceive reality from our inabilities, not from our abilities. And then that manifests. And every day, our inabilities, how we perceive ourselves through our inabilities, just manifest. And by the time people are adults, you know, I mean, people can wear the mask and stuff, but you know, if you can see what's going on emotionally and see chaos. And if chaos exists like that, then how are people going to think clearly and coherently to deal with the realities that must be dealt with? So I think that it's our consciousness that must be healed. My heart will heal itself because it's biologically wired to. Well, anyway. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, right on. Thank you. One side was armed, and the other side wasn't allowed to be armed.
And the side that was armed?
We're basically, it was done through the Bureau of Indian Affairs Police and the tribal police, but the directors behind it were these FBI people that came in and set all of this in motion. Because this reign of terror, there was no reign of terror in 1972. There were hard times, but then the FBI showed up in January of '73 because AIM had taken over the BIA building in Washington, D.C. for 1 week during Nixon's re-election. So they were really angry at us. But they couldn't deal with us in Washington, D.C. because there was too much meat, too much scrutiny. So then, so when we left, and see, the FBI came to Pine Ridge in January of '73 and started arming the police and training them and just using the police to fight a political war against the AIM activists and their traditionalists who were their base of support. And this is what the American government was trying to attack. So they use this reign of terror to try to terrorize people and break their spirit. But in the end, all it does is it intensifies it in some kind of a way. You know, and because, and like that one day in June in 1975, at that firefight, see, it has a lot of symbolism because the people fought back. You know, in a situation where they were truly outnumbered because for 2.5 years this war had been being waged against them.
Loan me a minute, let me borrow your ear. I'll sing you a song about Leonard Peltier. He's gone so long in a federal jail, the innocent victim of a tangled tale. In South Dakota, where the fear has grown, the president's a watch from a mountain of stone. They say all people are free to roam. There ain't no freedom in the Indian home. How many have gone before? And tell me how many more must be lost to the Indian war? The company spoke to the high command. We need the deeds to the Indian land to dig for oil and uranium ore, and maybe have to start a little Indian war. The orders came from away on high, and it was a job for the FBI. It won't be hard, all we'll have to do is just cause a little trouble and follow it through.
I'll try to be coherent and make sense. I mean, there's so much history, there's so much story that it can never all really be covered in the short times that we have. But I'm glad to see everyone here, and I'm really happy that I could be here. It just turned out. And here, you know, I mean, because me, I remember, you know, the most, like, I have to identify a lot with Mae Aquash, who we're honoring Mae Aquash here at the memorial for today, and Annie Mae. And I mean, we come from Joseph and where June and Annie Mae are, but the struggle that we've been involved in, this war that was fought in the way there was fought 28 years ago, 30 years ago on this reservation. The war is still here and it's still real, but form has changed. It's like we deal with a predator. There's a predator that is not just white people and Indians. There's a predator mentality. A predator mentality that Western civilization represents, and it ate up its own people. It put its mentality into white people before it ever got here. It erased. What the predator thing does is it erases the memories. It erases the ancestral memory of the human beings. That's its long-term objective. These battles and these little wars that get fought, the predator has time for that, because the predator erases the memory of the ancestor from the living human being. Does it through the generations. So the war still takes place because the predator, I call it a spirit eater. It's here to eat our spirit. And this mentality is just as, it's more prevalent now than it was 30 years ago. But the Indians are now expanding. The Indians are now the citizens of America and the workers of America. They're the new Indians. For us, the original, the first native people, the first Indians, we have been enduring this predatory perceptional reality for 500 years, and somehow we exist, we survive, the memory still stays alive. But it's a new war that's coming. And for us as Native people, a part of it is we see the influx of drugs into our communities. We see the influx, right, of poverty into our communities. But they have been waging this, the drug before 100 years ago was alcohol, so they're not doing anything really new to us than they have been doing before. The form has changed of how they go about it and how they do it. And this predator has already erased the memories of its own, of the Europeans, the descendants of the tribes of Europe. Their memory, their ancestral memory has been erased. And what seems to happen is when the ancestral memory gets erased from the human being, then the human being lives a powerless life. They feel powerless. And to hide that powerlessness, then violent behaviors, aggressive behaviors, neurotic, self-destructive behaviors start to emerge to disguise false prides. Different things start to emerge to disguise that feeling of powerlessness. But as long as we have an ancestral memory, we will not be powerless. And as human beings, we have the ability to get back the ancestral memory because it's there. We just have to recognize and access. And this war that I'm saying is continuing to go on. The war against the native people, the predator war against the native people is the same war the predator war waged against the descendants of the tribes of Europe, and that is to erase the ancestral memory. That is to alter our perception of reality. To use violence, poverty, all of the aggressive, bad behaving ways are used, but all of that is done to instill, make fear the strongest part of our reality, to alter how we perceive reality, to alter how we perceive ourselves and our abilities as human beings. This war remains continuous. This war does not change. They are more dangerous now than they have ever been in this war. And on this land, on the Western Hemisphere, the native peoples, we are the people that are the closest to carrying ancestral memory and ancestral thought. But as each generation passes, it gets removed a little bit further away. Because the predator's idea is to erase 5 generations from now. It's okay to the predator 5 generations from now if America has Indians. But 5 generations from now, it is not okay to the predator if the Indians have memories of their ancestor, if the Indians still have the memory of the earth as the mother, if the Indians still have understand the reality of a spiritual reality. This is what the predator is out to erase. And this perception of reality has already been basically erased in the citizens of America. Because the way that America continues to operate is it does eat spirits. It attacks spirits. The peoples of America, non-native speaking generally, but the peoples of America, they still believe what the predator taught them to believe. They may rebel against it, they may have quarrels with it, but they believe in the predator perception of reality. And the predator perception of reality is that there is something wrong with all of us. There's something wrong with us. We have to obey. We have to listen to them. The predator perception of reality is because there is something wrong with us, we must consume. Because there is something wrong with us, our lives become dominated with fear. Because there is something wrong with us, then we are powerless to deal with who they are. Because there is something wrong with us, we continue to vote, and they would continue to vote in political systems that are a lie. Because there is something wrong with the perception of reality, they believe in economic systems that is a lie. Because there's something wrong with the perception of reality, they believe in gods that have no understanding of spirituality and the spiritual reality of life. So
Our perceptual reality for us as human beings and as people is what's at stake. But as human beings, we have intelligence. And this battle that continues, this war, this generational war that continues to go on, this thing that continues to eat at our spirit, the self-defense that we have, our Creator, all human beings, descendants of tribes of Europe, the descendants of the tribes of this hemisphere, we were all given intelligence. We were given intelligence. This is our medicine, it's our protection, it's our self-defense. It's our self-respect, our intelligence. I do not know how we can, any human being can go and pray to a Creator and not thank the Creator for life and thank the Creator for giving us intelligence so that we would be able to create a peaceful or a good reality in this life. See, and if our prayers to the Creator don't start from that understanding, then we truly need to look at ourselves. With our intelligence, everything that the predator ever did to any of us, that they ever did, was to alter our perception of reality. So the brutalization, the mass murder, the terrorization was all done to affect how the survivors perceive reality. All of this had to happen to influence our intelligence, because we perceive reality through our intelligence.